before I clicked play, admittedly, I said that, we're live on the interwebs now. Admittedly, I said, I'm going to appear rude for a second because I don't want to, use up good content, which is so hard because I haven't talked to you like this or in person in such a long time. We share things on social media. We text occasionally, hey, how's it going, stuff like that. And all I want to do is say, hey, Sam Chapman, how you doing? How are things going? That's all I want to do. So I was fighting every bone in my body not to just, be all friendly right off the bat.
Totally get that. Well, yeah, it's so good to see you, Bob. It's been a minute, but I really appreciate the invite today. So I'm really happy to be here. But yeah, things are going really well. It's been a busy summer. I can't believe it's already fall and we're getting ready for Halloween and Thanksgiving.
Is it really fall though? I mean, maybe today, but yesterday honestly, anything over 70 degrees, I'm hot and nasty and it's gross outside, but it has been it's been so gross outside, and fall would be wonderful.
It definitely feels like summer, so it feels like an extended summer, but I feel like we're actually officially fall. Hopefully the weather
Officially
will
fall?
catch up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what do they call it? The autumnal equinox was in September. I was doing a radio show when it happened. It was like 1:19 in the afternoon, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
No, it's
so
true. Very true.
so this podcast here is just me talking with folks that I've met throughout all of my adventures, and uh, I want to talk about how we met, but then I want to talk about you up to when we met, like what got you to the spot where in your life when we met. And so I guess I failed to introduce you here. I just was so excited to say, "Oh, Sam!" So today on Dad Bod Walking, I've got Samantha Chapman. She is now. You guys just had a name change, so forgive me if I fumble this. You're the Indiana State Director for the Humane World for Animals, which used to be the Humane Society, correct?
That's right.
I
Yes.
and so Sam and I met a number of years ago when I was, well, still am, but when I was on the council working for some town legislation to ban puppy mills. And we can get into that later because, boy, some of that, I still have a tinfoil hat on as to why it wasn't a standard and then why it got overturned on a statewide thing.
Oh yeah, we can definitely talk about that. But
I
yeah,
have
Bob,
thoughts about
you
that.
were an amazing champion in the town of Dyer, and we are just so grateful. And even though we had 21 ordinances on the books, the fact that the state came in and preempted it, I still feel like is just hard to believe that happened. But I think onward and upward, we'll keep fighting for animals in different ways. But yeah,
Well,
it was
there's
unfortunate.
all sorts of things, and a lot of it which you and I and we'll talk about a ton of things here in the next hour or so. You and I are on if we want to look at the political spectrum, we are on different sides of the aisle. Yet on certain things, it really doesn't matter. And I thought we worked so well together. And when you have this aisle that they talk about, and you have people from both sides with a concern that get together to do something that our community wanted, 20 some other communities wanted. Many of these places were bipartisan in nature. And then for somebody else to step in and say, no, you can't do that. So for people that are listening, because again, it's when the problem with having friends on a podcast is we have years of back history and conversation, so we start into that. And you're the expert. You tell the folks what we're talking about here when I talk about puppy mills and banning them in the sale in Indiana. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I can go back, provide some historical context. So this all really started a number of years ago when the state of Illinois passed a statewide ban on the retail sale of dogs in pet stores. And so, up in the region, Bob, where you are, we started to see a lot of pet stores from Illinois move over into the state of Indiana. And so it became really troubling, I think, for a lot of local community leaders, especially like in the sheltering and rescue space, to see these new pet stores popping up that are sourcing, almost exclusively from pet stores. They're almost exclusively sourcing from puppy mills. And so basically, what ended up happening was many communities reached out to our organization and said, what can we do about this? I mean, we already are struggling. We have a number of animals in our shelters. We're overflowing. We can't keep up with what we have. And now we have these pet stores that are coming into our communities selling dogs for thousands of dollars at ridiculous and criminal interest rates. And we know the business model is just, it's very predatory for people, because what happens is somebody goes into the store, they see a cute puppy, the sales associate puts said cute puppy onto your lap. You fall in love with said puppy.
How can
Said
you not?
puppy,
How can you not?
exactly. They sell themselves, right? They're adorable. And then they say, oh, by the way, this is $2,500. And for the average person to say, wow, that's a lot of money. But then they say, oh, by the way, we have financing, no problem. And you can walk away with this puppy today. And so a lot of people,
For only 48 easy payments of $3.99 or something ridiculous.
Exactly. And what we started to see, I mean, Humane Indiana is one of our great shelter partners. They had a dog that was surrendered, that was purchased at a puppy selling pet store in the region. And the person, unfortunately, was unhoused. They didn't have a home. And they unfortunately had to relinquish that animal to the pet store, and they were still making payments, unfortunately. And so I think that story is a testament of the work that we were really, doing in a lot of communities up your way, but across the state, we're, wanting to have an impact in stopping puppy mills and really cutting down on that inhumane puppy mill to pet store pipeline. And so Dyer and other communities, up in northern Indiana really started to pass these ordinances, and really appreciated the partnership, and just how willing you were to listen. I mean, I think you also heard from constituents that, didn't want to support this cruelty in their backyard. And I think the other thing that was really cool about that work was that we were, maybe there's not puppy mills directly in your community, but by having a puppy selling pet store come in, you are, indirectly supporting puppy mills. And so I think these communities that worked on ordinances were able to say, hey, we don't want to support this in any way, so please don't come to our town.
Right. And you and I had, and even people in the group, for those communities that already had pet stores, we even had some philosophical differences on, okay, how do we pass some type of local legislation that interrupts a business already happening. And I think maybe that is, and it was all constructive conversation, but we were fortunate in Dyer that we didn't have any of these stores already. So it was, and that was my message to other folks in other communities, to say, hey, because they would come back and say, well, it's not in our community. We're not going to worry about it. I said, well, it's not in your community yet. You don't have to worry about it yet. The problem is then as a, if I'm going to put on my, conservative Republican hat when we're by and large pro-business and we, our estimation is to get government out of the way and let businesses thrive. Once that business is now in your community, now you've got two competing ideologies of, well, I'm pro-business, but I don't like this business. So what business am I choosing? And then you've got that, well, we shouldn't be choosing business. So I advocated to folks that said, hey, if you don't have, because there are some communities, especially up by me, that already had some. Like you said, there was an exodus out of Illinois. We are a stone's throw away from just this massive population of the Chicagoland area, so they were coming here, and it was almost an urgent battle cry to say, "Hey, do this now." So Republicans, so you don't have to worry about it in the future. And some heeded that warning, some did not. And I never really got mad at the ones that didn't. Um, I think the ones that I got most irritated about when I was talking to them were the ones that um, uh, didn't even care to listen to the story. It's like if you've made an informed decision that hey, we've got these in our community, we're going to manage them if something comes up. It's like okay, that's fair. The people elected you for whatever you want to do. That's fine. But some of those folks that just said, not my problem. It's like, well, it's not your problem. But it could be because, like you said, these guys sell themselves. If I put a puppy in your lap right now and I said $1, you'd be all, oh, okay, because it's a puppy. How can you not like it? The problem is there's this XY axis of do you want the puppy and the cuteness factor, and the money kept going up. Some of these dogs are so expensive, and I've got nothing against. I mean, when you're holding the dog, you want to take the dog. I don't want any more made or mass produced, but you've got the one here, so it's like you want to rescue that one. Rescue, pay for. I don't know. That's. I think we've paid. I say we, but in my life, I think I've maybe paid for puppies twice in 40 some years. The rest were rescues. In my mind, where I was okay with it, and like I said, this were two competing things. I was okay with it because it's like, well, I see this puppy now. I never paid $2,500, But when you see these puppies, it's like, well, if I don't buy it, the problem is once they're not puppies anymore, they're just letting them out the door. And I think we know this. I'm sure you have a million horror stories of that. So it's like, well, and maybe I don't think I misspoke, but I said I rescued it. Yeah, on once or twice in 40 years, I paid more money than the $20, shelter fee. But it was, they're 6 or 9 months old. As soon as they hit a year or more, they're kind of out of that cute puppy phase, and now they're just biting and nipping and tearing stuff up, which, if you get a puppy, you've planned for that. But they just open the back door and, oops, we left the door open over the weekend, and, now we've got a new, rush. So I was very passionate about it. But all of our cats, now that's one thing, I've never paid for a cat. I paid after because they can be expensive. Don't get a cat unless you're willing to pay money for it down the road. But yeah, so anyway, so folks listening out on the interwebs, this is how we met. We tried to save puppies. And if that's not the great start of a good, hey, that's my friend, I'd hard to think of fewer fun stories than that.
Definitely. Saving puppies is good. And, along those same, I think, Republican lines, often what happens is like what I just described with the puppy being surrendered to Humane Indiana. Our local shelters and rescues, whether that's a nonprofit or a government municipal animal control, is taking those animals in and at the cost of taxpayers, right? So our local tax dollars are funding these agencies or donations from kind-hearted people. They're picking up the pieces of bad actors, which is also just not, it's a very kind thing to do, but unfortunately those people are going to continue to act poorly. And
right.
It was nice to have some sort of a legislative solution to that at the local level. So,
you got to be quicker than that. I still know. So then to wrap that up quickly, folks, at some point a year or two after I feel like we did this big push, the state legislature came in with various state reps from across the state that said, we're not going to allow municipalities to decide what types of businesses they can have in their communities. And as such, any of these shelter ban or puppy mill ordinances, whatever the vernacular was that the individual towns use, all of them are no good. You can have them on the books if it makes you feel better, but it doesn't matter because someone will get an attorney and that's no longer enforceable. So basically, again, in these, it's a Republican supermajority. I'm Captain Republican up here, and I was so irritated because the Indianapolis, and when I say Indianapolis, I mean the state house, these state reps, they hate with a passion when Washington, D.C. says, you must do this. They say, oh, we're our own people. But by golly, they had zero issue saying, oh, well, you little towns and cities, you can't do this. We decide. And so there was a bunch of hypocrisy like that, especially from my side of the aisle. I'm doing air quotes for those listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I really felt that there certainly was an ideological, political betrayal of that. And, we live in such a judicious world. You have to watch what you say because there's freedom of speech, but not freedom of consequence. And so I'm not saying there was anything nefarious going on. But if I did have a tinfoil hat on, I would say, what's it to you? What's it to you? The only reason you would push against something like that is if you had someone behind you pushing a different narrative that said, no, this is acceptable. And you're nodding, I'm nodding, and that's just, I think that's what it is, I guess.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think what ended up happening was Petland, which is this huge, out-of-state corporation, came in and they paid some lobbyists some money, and they were able to get their agenda passed, unfortunately, just because they're the last largest selling pet store chain in the country, and they want to show that they have a sustainable business model, even though we know that people are just not buying puppies from pet stores like they used to. And they're dying. I mean, the business model is dying. People want to do the right thing. They either want to adopt a puppy from a shelter or rescue, or they want to get it from a responsible breeder that does the genetic testing, that makes sure that dog is a good fit for those people's lives. So, I mean, I think it's just a matter of time. And I think Petland saw the writing on the wall. And so they came in and they thought we were too successful in terms of our local work. So that's what happened.
Speaking of judicious, I want to talk about you for a second. One thing I guess I didn't know early on was that you're a lawyer.
Guilty as charged.
I didn't know that. So now you're the second lawyer on this podcast, and I think I'm going to get a reputation for having lawyers on here. But no, so you, this is all lifted from the interwebs. You can correct all of this, but if you correct it, you also then have to go to your LinkedIn, Facebook, MySpace, wherever. Manchester University, MySpace, right? Manchester University for Political Science and Psychology, I think, are the two things that said you've studied. And then you went to be an evil, cruel lawyer. I tease. I had an attorney on here a couple episodes ago, a gentleman named Adam Cedia, and he had some really interesting insights into. I asked him. I said, for those of us who aren't lawyers, and for the lay folks, so I'm on the town council. I'm involved in politics, so I deal with lawyers on quite literally a daily basis. Y'all are a different breed. Love you, but and so as I get into how you got to be the Indiana State Director for the Humane Society, or the Humane World for Animals, I think that's the new rebranded name. What you're going through high school, you're going through college, political science, psychology. Was Indiana University, the law school, was that always your intention, or is at some point did you say, I want to be a lawyer for various reasons?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I've always been somebody who deeply cares about the world. I mean, I'm a millennial, so it's like on brand, right? So
Yeah.
I really deeply care. And when I was in high school, I would say my bigger issue that I cared most about was climate change and our world. Like, as somebody who was young and getting older, like, to think about our home and just sort of deforestation, and just I feel like the way that resources are wasted. Like that was something that was very of interest to me. And at the same time, I was, taking classes, and I was always very like good at English and history, and like I loved history and loved English. And so when I was a senior in high school, I took this class called We the People, and it was a program that basically we studied and learned about the Constitution of the United States. We were given a unit. We were asked to create a presentation, and then we went and competed against other schools across the state with our arguments. And it basically, the program really forces students to think critically about the Constitution, past and present. And there were a lot of lawyers and judges that were, involved in that in my community, and it just really, I excelled. Like somebody who was kind of a quiet kid in high school, like I really excelled in the presentation. I really liked thinking on my feet, and I just, after that, like I thought, my goodness, like I want to make a difference in this world, so why don't I just go to law school? So ever since my senior year of high school, like that was always on the horizon. I will say, like, I think what I wanted to do within the law has changed and evolved since then, and based on my interests and passions and experiences that I've had. So, but yeah, I always knew I wanted to advocate in some way, like whether that's for clients, whether that's for animals, whether that's for the environment, or, people who might be underserved. Like those are all issues that are really near and dear to my heart.
And that absolutely tracks with the conversation that I had with Adam about how he got into, it's like, okay, you study, you pass the bar, and then what do? He would probably consider himself an elder millennial. I think that's nebulous. So I was born in '82. So occasionally I get lumped in with a millennial, and occasionally I'm not. And more often I choose not to be, and it's usually just when I have a chagrin about whatever millennials are up to at that point in time. Like you said, it's completely on brand for a millennial to say, go environment, I'm now a lawyer. It's like if that doesn't, and if I had more time, I might like put millennial like over your head right now as a graphic, because that. But Adam had some of that same, and now I can say 100% of the attorneys on this podcast now, they had some type of, they liked English, history, art, debate, presenting. They liked being some type of catalyst for change or justice, and righting some type of wrongs. I did notice as I was doing a little bit of research on you, because I wanted to be mindful of your time and have something here. You had several jobs before what you have now, and we've all had a bunch of different jobs. But again, I'll tie it back to my last attorney. He had a few before. Now he does a lot of litigation, appellate work, but he's also a municipal attorney. So he has several municipalities that he's either their main attorney or just helps out, and he does these things. And he's been doing it for a while, so he's kind of settled into that. And I got, as I was reading yours, it's like, okay, I can tell that I'm an attorney. It looked like you followed some of the traditional attorney lawyer steps, and then you found, what you liked. And was that a measure of, you took the first, however many years, doesn't matter what it was, the first while to say, okay, this is what being an attorney is. This is what I want to do. Or as you found yourself with the Humane Society, was that a direction you were pushing in, or did it fall into your hands or your lap?
Yeah, so I will say I am the first and only attorney in my family. And I think, for one thing, I will tell people, like, everyone acts like everyone knows exactly what they want to do and they've got everything figured out. And there's just like, do this, 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 and this, And so for me, I didn't really know, like, in terms of taking the LSAT, getting into law school, what kind of job I was supposed to have, that was all new. And I sort of had to create my own path. I mean, I certainly had a lot of guidance, especially after getting into law school, and like I had advisors in college and whatnot. And so, I mean, I think in law school, they push, you get a big law job. Like if you can get a big law job, then that's like what you do. And if
Yeah,
you
that's
can get
what
a
TV
clerkship,
says. That's what
yeah,
TV says. You know.
definitely. I mean, and so, and my clerkship, similarly, I had a couple of externships. Actually, it was at Health and Hospital Corporation, Eskenazi Hospital, my second and third year of law school. I met one of their C-suite executives who was a lawyer, and he had suggested, he said, really doing a clerkship is one of the best things I've ever done for myself. And so that really pushed me into considering applying for a clerkship. And it really was an opportunity for me to, develop my legal reading and research and writing skills in a way, learning directly from a judge. So I thought that was really helpful. And then, yeah, I jumped right into big law. And, while the economy was okay when I came out of law school, the law firm that I was working for only had a certain opening and a practice group that I was, less than excited about joining.
Yeah.
At that time, I really thought I wanted to do something related to healthcare law. I got a health law certificate in law school. I was very interested in the connection between policy and healthcare. And I did my law review note about our built environment. So, like streets, bike paths, trails, and that effect on the obesity rate. And so,
Mm-hmm.
my note was actually published in our journal, the Health Law Review. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. But at that time, the law firm that I was working for didn't have an opening in that group. And so, what do, right? You take the job. I mean,
Yeah.
you figure it out. You have bills to pay. And so I think it was kind of a part of the reality of being an adult and trying to figure it out. And during that time, I realized I was built for more, I think, than just litigating amounts of money and disputes and things like that. I loved the policy that I was researching when I was in law school, and politics has always been something I've been interested in. I've always been a big like voter.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought it's really important to be like civically engaged. And so I ended up applying for a job with Secretary Connie Lawson's office as her business services attorney. And I had no legislative experience prior to that, other than like paging when I was like in middle school or something with my
Same.
state rep. Like I didn't really have any legislative experience, but she took a chance on me. And I'm so glad she did, because I learned everything from her about the legislative process. And for those of you that know Secretary Lawson, I mean, she is just an amazing individual and was such a fantastic boss. And she taught me, the way that the legislative process should work. And, I think one of the things I feel like in this current job is that that's really not the way that the state house works oftentimes anymore, bringing people together and having open conversations before the session starts and just making sure all stakeholders have been engaged. Like I think that's so important, and it's how I continue to do my job. But I mean, I learned that from the secretary. And so I think everybody has to figure out like what their role in this world is. And I think for me, maybe it was like a little bit of a windy path to get to
Oh
this
yeah,
job.
there's many ways around the barn. I didn't want to be rude and start turning around. I think somewhere. So this is my like. You see, I've got my challenge code, because somewhere in all of this, I actually have the lapel pin, a Secretary of State lapel pin from Connie Lawson. Somewhere in here, I'll find it. I don't want to be rude now. Have people looking back at my head,
Totally
but
fine.
I thought I really liked her. I I was sad to see her go. I think she had some health issues. I don't know. I don't know. But I thought she was fantastic. And when I look at Connie Lawson, when I look at former Lieutenant Governor Becky Skillman, some of these folks that were in the state house, now I don't even say 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, boy, that sure would be nice to have some of that back. And I say that with some of my folks in there now. Those people that were more interested in communication and connection than sound bites. I really feel so. I did see that you had worked for the Secretary of State then, and I was hoping that you had a good experience with her, because I've always man, now I got to find, because I helped out with one of her reelection campaigns. I've got I think a sticker too. I really respected what she was trying to accomplish in that office. And a lot of these people, even at a local municipal level, I know you had ran for, I want to say, was it city council, town council, county, something. You ran for something, and people need more, or communities need more folks like us. Not patting myself on the back, but folks who understand what the process is. Connie Lawson understood what her job was, what that role and responsibility was at the Secretary of State, whereas other people, hey, I'm doing this so I can get my street repaved, or I'm doing this so I can get on a soundbite on Fox News. And okay, but for the rest of us 6-7 million here, we want you to kind of do your job. And that was a fun. Now I'm thinking of all the good Connie Lawson stories. So when we were talking about kind of finding your way through the attorney world, and I don't know why I was fascinated by it when I was speaking with Adam, because I look at my career path, or career path of all my friends. Almost none of us use the degree that we got, the bachelor's degree that we got, other than it's the one that kind of opens the door. I have one in organization management, a bachelor's in organization management. I don't even know where it's at. I think we have a little document safe at the house, and so I think I hope it's probably in there. But I don't know. It's that journey afterwards that's like, okay, well, now that I'm in this field, I think you probably spend the first 10 years finding out what you don't really like doing. Maybe that's what the folks before us called paying your dues, but it really wasn't. I think what you set out to do, that the glamour and the glory in your head of, I'm going to be an attorney, you probably don't think that the first couple years, is this what it is? And I can say that I've heard that similar story. But as you go on, you now find yourself at the Humane Society, and that had to be an amazing get for you, just in terms of I have a passion for all of these things, communicating history, to trying to right wrongs in the world. Now I'm an attorney, and I do these things, and to kind of merge those two together. I have to imagine that the time between however that interview process went and getting it was nerve-wracking, because you seem just so perfectly fit for that job. And you've been there for several years. I say several years, but I have zero concept of time. So I don't know how long it's been.
It's been about 6.5 years now, which is like crazy to me that time has gone by that quickly. And when I applied for the job, I was like, this is my dream job. And that's what I was able to tell, the secretary when I left. It was like, it's not that I was really looking for something different, but like, this is my dream job. Like, I can't pass this up, right? Like, it combines all of my legal skills, my advocacy work, my legislative experience into this package deal where I get to professionally advocate for animals, which is a dream come true. Now, I will say since then, like, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. I think people always are like, oh my gosh, you have the coolest job, which I do have the coolest job. I will completely agree with that. But I think that when you deeply care about the work that you're doing, it hits home and it's more personal than if you're just kind of a hired gun.
Yeah.
And so when we have wins, the wins are, I mean, it's the highest high you can imagine, right? When you do good and you pass a resolution or an ordinance or a bill, and you work with legislators and city and town council folks to do that. But when you lose and or you are not able to stop some bad bill, or your work that you've done has been undone, like, I mean, it's, you experience really low
Yeah.
lows as well. And there's a lot of, I think, pressure and guilt that comes along with that. But I think, the one thing that I've grown as a person in this job, like, I've become a stronger advocate for animals, but also for myself. And I think it's important to have boundaries, to be able to still take time for things that you love to do, spend time with your loved ones, self-care. And it's okay to take a break. I think that's the other thing that I've learned, that, like, sometimes you can put something down when you've experienced a bit of a loss and then come back to it. And then once you've regrouped, you're going to be back stronger. But, like, sometimes you just have to grieve. You have to grieve that loss because it happens. And especially in a state like Indiana, we're a big agriculture state, and a lot of the work that we do related to companion animals is very well received. But I think there's always something in the back of folks' minds, like, okay, today it's dogs, but next it's going to be pigs. And that's our food. So what are you doing here? And it's like, I think that's one of my biggest struggles at the state house, is really just trying to get legislators to understand that we're working on the issue at hand, just as any other advocacy
Right.
group or lobbyist is doing. So
I that process of having passion. I said if I won the lotto tomorrow, I would probably quit my day job, but I would still be extremely intense on the municipal level doing it because I love these things. And you're right. When you have some success on something that you've been working on, it is by far the best feeling in the world. There's not a paycheck that could compare to that. When you finally see something done, one of the thoughts I think is, I wish everybody could feel that sense of achievement sometimes. And yeah, I mean, for me, sometimes it's just getting a road paved, and other times it's doing big things. And so it doesn't matter necessarily the size of the accomplishment. It's that something got accomplished. And yeah, when something doesn't swing your way, man, that is tough because you've on many ways you've made it so personal that which is a hard way to fight too, because sometimes it's, hey, they're not coming after Sam, they're coming after this agenda that they don't really care for whatever reason. No, look at that.
she's on cue, just as I asked her to just make an appearance in my
Yep.
Zoom chat.
Yeah, that's how the cats are. And I do have a cat question here that I'm going to ask you shortly.
Oh, good,
But
good.
it's tough. And the self care, the stepping back, the phrase I always use is you can't pour from an empty cup. So
Exactly.
occasionally after those defeats, you do have to go. There's a reason why, after this is going to sound awful because we're talking about animals, but after some altercation, the dogs go back and they lick their wounds. That's just a part of getting back up again. And I can see where, especially when that's why puppies are sellable. You put them in your hands. When you have this cute thing in your hands, and whatever you're working on doesn't work out, that's got to be extra hard. For friends that you may have on social media, sometimes scrolling your social media page is like this. Was it the ISPCA or ASPCA, whatever? It's like I hear Sarah McLachlan's singing as I scroll down. 'Cause it's like all these sad animal stories. I think the last one was there was a sad elephant story in Indianapolis. I was like, why? It's Indiana. Why are we messing with the elephants?
You know what? It's so frustrating because this circus, Carson and Barnes, it's one of the last that still brings around these elderly elephants. And unfortunately, they have another performance scheduled in Hammond at the end of November.
Not too far away from me.
Exactly. And it's really too bad that they continue to think that this is the only way that they can, make a profit. But we're continuing to work on that issue, and I think just educating people about just the lives that elephants live, on the road in cramped conditions. And the other thing is that these folks, they completely violate local law. I mean, in Indianapolis, there was a bullhook ban on the books, and blatantly these circus operators were using bullhooks on these elephants, Kelly and Viola, just in broad daylight. I mean, it was captured in video and photos, and I think that they just really disregard the law, and they see it as a cost to doing business, which I mean I think is incredibly frustrating for municipalities and in counties that have passed ordinances that
And
are
they've
intending.
built in, um, we have, um, we've seen a few actors, not in the animal world, but that know something's wrong, that they're doing something wrong, but they just build the cost of the fine, violation, ticket, whatever, into their business model. That okay, so you fine me $1,000. I've made 5 grand on this, so I've made four, and I'm okay, or, whatever it is. And that is, it's disappointing, if nothing else. It's just disappointing. It's like, okay, good for you. You found a way around the system. Again, you've made so much money. Some's going to go to fines, and that's just on your bill. You've got food, water, electric, and fines, and you just build that into your budget. And it's again, it's just kind of disappointing. Now I do. There is a place, and I may cry if you tell me, oh, they're awful. Don't ever go there. They're just all. There is a place outside of French Lick. I want to say it's near Paoli. Maybe no, no. Don't break my
Wilson
heart.
Ranch. Wilson Ranch.
I, is that the one with the elephants and the giraffe? We went there after French Lick is popular for just conventions and work retreats and stuff. And this must have been, oh gosh, 7, 8 years ago, maybe. Because Liam was, I mean, I had to hold him. He was very little. And, French Lick is a place where folks have work conventions, but it's nice enough where people tend to bring their families. There's stuff for families to do while you're off, doing the work stuff. And I think we ducked out one day because we're like, oh, well, take him to go see an elephant. And you get there and he got to see an elephant. And he got to feed the giraffe a carrot or leaves, I think, some leafy green. And I remember him being all excited about it. But then, of course, I don't know how giraffes and elephants get to the middle of Indiana. Occasionally you hear of places that, this is somebody with a lot of land wants to help these animals, so they find them out of bad circuses or whatever, and they rehome them in a safe place where they can go. And then you hear the other side of it where it's like, no, they're buying them for. And it's like, admittedly, I didn't want to know because it was it was cute at the time. Um, so I see the look on your face. You're going to tell me that's no good.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go there if it were on my own accord. But I mean, I think what's important to know is that usually most reputable zoos or sanctuaries are not going to let you have direct contact with animals just in
Right.
general. So if you're at a facility that you can interact, you can hold something. I mean, there are some AZA zoos that do allow you, I think, to feed giraffes and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I
But
think
like,
it was like romaine lettuce or something. They gave you a couple pieces, and he just thought that was kind of cool to
yeah.
have
Oh,
this.
I get
You
the
know,
appeal. I totally get the appeal. Wilston has unfortunately had some pretty egregious violations from USDA in recent years, and they fought us when we brought a bill several years ago that prohibited direct contact with lions, tigers, and bears specifically. And they came out and
ooh,
opposed.
do they have those down there?
They don't, but
Oh,
um, I think that just in the line of work
the
that they're in,
idea, yeah.
a lot of different types of animals in their
Who
encounters.
my first thought is who would want to? I worry about being too close to a bear. Is that a thing? I guess it's a thing. I mean, they gotta like just feed the bear like crazy, so he's just so full that doesn't he doesn't want to interact. Because otherwise, again, I'm not an animal expert, but man, I would be so afraid that this thing would just take a swipe at you. Because as we just saw your cat walk across the stage there, they don't really listen all that well, and when they want to do something, they're going to do something, and I don't know. I don't think I'd want to be near a lions or tigers or bear.
Yeah, and I will
I don't
say,
know. That's
like,
me.
they're insanely dangerous. I mean, what we were really going after, you know about Tiger King and Joe Exotic and
Yeah.
all of that. So we had a facility in Charleston, Indiana, called Wildlife in Need, and it was run by Tim Stark. And so Tim offered uh, tiger and cub petting and bear cub petting as well, like with little children. But often those animals were declawed, and so it was safer. But like, I mean, to be honest with you, there were still violations from USDA where people were getting bitten and scratched. Just not a safe thing to do. And then, really, like, what happens after that animal becomes not a cute baby anymore, like we were just talking about
With the
puppies, they get
puppies. Yeah.
sold into the wildlife trade and they end up living just in terrible conditions. And so, and they've been, declawed. They've been rid of their, finger, their claws. And so, what are they to
Yeah.
do? Right? Like, they can't go back into the wild. So then they're going to live in captivity for the rest of their lives. The lucky ones end up, at maybe a sanctuary like Black Pine and in Albion, Indiana, or another one across the United States. But the other ones are traded for entertainment shows or roadside zoos, and just
Yeah.
really not given the lives that they deserve, that they should have been afforded in the wild.
You said declawing. A mutual friend of ours who's up here at the time, Ange worked at the Cherville, um, uh, the town of Cherville, their animal shelter. They've got one there. Um, and I had a cat that had passed away, and I was in mourning, and so the worst thing you can do when you're in mourning from an animal that has passed is to go look at other animals because you will come home with another animal.
Yeah.
It's math. It's 1 + 1 = 2. And so I go there, and there was this kitten who, they had spent some money. I mean, the she had just had a litter, but they had spent some money in that. She was front declawed already, and that's not an. I don't think it's expensive, but it's not inexpensive. I mean, you still have to take them in and have you still have to do something. So for them to just keep the kittens, give the cat up, I thought that was. I took pity on this now, nubby cat, and so now she's at home just terrorizing the dog. No, the dog terrorizes her. She wants very little to do with any of us.
So,
But yeah, so I have. I also. I tried really hard to take home. They had a bonded pair of dogs
okay.
that were like some retriever type, mix of something. And not only were they a bonded pair, but they were hyper aggressive to anyone else who would attempt to even be. I mean, to the point where we had to, for a couple days, we then had to just like lock them in their own area because we couldn't. They would bite us and they would attack us, and so it was awful. I have a string floating for those people watching. I felt bad, but it's like I got a kid. They're gonna bite. I talked to her later on, and it sounds like they found a group that would take and then just separated them because they were who knows what awful conditions they were in to have that bonded pair pack mentality that they just were not suitable for, you know, a home that we had. Perhaps if we had, 10 acres and a pole barn, you know, they're animals. They would have had fun, but not for domesticated suburban living. And we felt awful because we had my wife's father, Bill Marshall. He ran a Great American Greyhound for a very long time until his passing. They're still out there now. They would take the dogs off of the tracks because it was either that or they'd be, and so they'd take them
Right.
and they'd get them homes. Great work. Over time, the tracks closed. Then the tracks got somewhat protective. The protective is not the right word. Selective of who they would give these greyhounds to, and it turned. My estimation, it turned more into, we're not going to give you these dogs unless you actively promote the racing industry.
Oh wow.
And so then you get groups out there that says, no, we're not actively promoting your industry. We're saving these dogs because you raced them for 2 years, they broke a leg, and you were just chucking them. So we're trying to find some place for this this greyhound, and so
Absolutely.
it seemed like in addition to tracks just closing, it not being a hugely popular thing in this area now. The group still exists. They do they do a lot of beagle rescue stuff. They rescue, do a lot with some of the galgos from Spain, because it's big over there. A galgo's not unlike a greyhound, shaped a little differently, but from a distance you'd probably say, "Oh, that looks like a greyhound." I think they're in between the little Italian yappy greyhounds and the big greyhounds, is somewhere in the middle there. So they do a lot of that work, and so we've just always, adopted that way. And so giving up these dogs, it was hard on us, but it was like, I still to this day have, and I don't mind chew marks on things because they're, but these were like, I think they were trying to chew out of the house. Still on my baseboard. They were just it was rough. It was
Well,
rough, but
well, there's no shame in saying, this isn't going to work out for me, especially when you're adopting from a shelter or rescue. I think that it's good. It does take time for animals to decompress, but sometimes not every dog is a good fit
right.
with every home, with resident dogs or cats, and so like I think you have to really you shouldn't be miserable either. That's not promoting the human animal bond. If you're
Yeah.
struggling with, or there is just not a good fit for you. I personally, I think it's better to find those animals another place that works better for them. So
Yeah.
no shame,
Our
no shame in that at all.
our, our cat stories were some of them. One, my wife had a cat before we had met that was just left in a box outside of a pet store, type thing. It seems to be, unfortunately, somewhat common that, if you're the opening shift, there's a box with mine, Fuji, who, apologies to cat owners out there. I had the best cat ever. Your cats were all garbage compared to my Fuji. She was the best ever. I called her Fuji. I was working at a Walgreens. This was in college. I was working at a Walgreens up at 5th and Broad in Gary. So not the nicest of areas. And it was around Valentine's Day when Walgreens, they still make, so like the big, like cheesy stuffed animal things for Valentine's Day. And I thought that someone had stuck one behind the photo machine because I saw like this tail curling out of it. And it wasn't. It was just a little kitten with the longest tail you've ever seen behind the Fuji photo machine. So I put her in a. It was an empty box that had toilet paper in it, so it was a pretty big box. Put her in there. I went off the shelf, grabbed a can. Don't worry, Walgreens. I paid for the can. and that's how Fuji came around. She lasted for a very, very long time. And so those are my cat stories of
That's
just
awesome.
randomly finding them.
What a lucky girl. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, she was. Oh, she lived a good life too. She
I
she
bet.
did. She's
That's
spoiled.
awesome.
So I have one. I have one question that's a cat question.
Okay.
And again, one of the nice things about having met you, and you're always like in my back toolbox of, hey, if I have a question, if I have a need for something, I ask you. And cats out, what I call cats out in the wild, but these are not wild cats. These are, I don't know if the proper term is feral, but they're like the neighborhood cats
Community cats.
that just kind of roam around.
Yes.
I have two different thoughts on them. I'm hoping maybe you can educate me a little.
Sure.
On one hand, I've got this like orange tabby cat that has been wandering my neighborhood for a year or two. I have zero issue with this singular cat just roaming around. It does not look like it's wanting for food. It's doing okay. So in my mind, I think of it like having a possum in the backyard. Love possums. I have zero issue with a possum living under my shed because they're fantastic. I love them. Same thing. Oh, they probably eat the mice or whatever, and they just kind of keep
Totally.
things okay. In town, we have a handful of folks that are huge cat enthusiasts, and they feed all of these cats, and so there may be six, seven, eight cats that then just kind of wander around, and it's tough to get some folks to. I believe the program is a TPR, to basically to get them neutered, and then to bring them back. And so then you get that many cats, they start, going into the cats don't know what's your yard and someone else's yard, so they start going everywhere, and then they become a nuisance. And so now, on one hand, where I'm okay with a neighborhood cat just living out their existence in the wild being the neighborhood, and then I have this other side where it's like, well, if you're feeding this group of cats, in my estimation, it's like, well, you're kind of artificially keeping that population alive, because if they didn't have, the six cans of food on your doorstep, they would probably do what cats have done for a million years, and they would go find where food is. And so I find myself often at times at odds with some residents when they say, well, you're the animal lover. I am, but I also see if you're kind of artificially keeping this population alive. So what we've done in town is we've basically said, look, if we catch you feeding them, they're your cat, because you're in my opinion, you're taking some type of ownership over their well-being. If you're going to house them and feed them, by house them I don't mean in the house, I just mean give them some type of I've seen some folks, they'll get like the Rubbermaid boxes and maybe put some insulation in there. It's better than that. They're not just sticking fiberglass, but you know what I mean. So they can kind of come and go and put some straw in there. It's like, okay, if you've got one, but at some point, dude, you're not on a farm somewhere. You are in a cookie cutter subdivision with 60 by 100 lots, and if you've got 6, 7 cats out there that are then going around to neighbors and doing their business in their yards, it's like you start to get out of that. So from your experience in this world, is that an issue places, or is that just something that I've got a few residents here that love to keep cats like that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think generally, if you go back to like the issue, and I think why TNR has become so popular over the years and so beneficial, I think, in communities, is that there are just not enough homes for the amount of cats, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
TNR is great in that, you have the animals that are fixed. So they're not reproducing, right, and making more and more and more cats. I mean, you've got to catch them and return them, but I mean, they can live outside, like you've mentioned, with a caretaker. I have heard people who believe that they're nuisances and have other issues and concerns about wildlife and all of that. And I think I think it's tough. I think each community has to decide what works best. But I mean, generally speaking, I think TNR is a good option, because cats can live outside, and if they're being cared for, dogs, that's really different story. But I mean, I think a lot of communities are even like sort of, instead of actually taking cats in, like to shelter them and to like take that cost on, a lot of them will like catch these cats. They'll either spay or neuter them, then they'll return them to the area. And they're not even really trying to adopt out the cats because
Right.
they're outside, they're happy, they've lived that way, they're content that way. But I do understand, if people, somebody's caring for these cats and it's your neighbor and they don't like cats, like what
Yeah,
issues
and
that can
so much
potentially
of it goes
bring.
beyond, oh, there's a cat issue. Sometimes it really just ends up being, no, you have a neighbor issue.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
where a lot of times it's, hey, look, okay, so you're doing this stuff with the cats, but your neighbor doesn't like them. So maybe, every couple days, offer to go to their rock garden that they've spent a lot of money on and, clean it up. So some of that too is less an issue with the actual cat than it is the, just um, being neighborly goes both ways.
It
you know.
does. I mean, I think too, like there's, and this is tough because like if it's not your property, but like I mean, I don't know that always like feeding them on your own property, if there's like a more like a space like in a wooded area, like just other places that are not like in a domestic residential area,
Yeah.
it would cause more conflict. But I will say Humane World has a ton of resources related to like outdoor community cats, policies, things that work. I'm not an expert in cat issues. I like cats. I know a little bit about cat issues and TNR, but I mean, we have a ton of resources for if you're interested in learning more, or anybody that's listening to this podcast, about ways to sort of, figure out how to navigate some of those conflicts and help community members. So,
Yeah, and like I said, it's tough because y'all get the call and you're the cat guy. I love cats. I have had cats. I will probably always have cats. I don't mind the little orange tabby that runs around the neighborhood. But two things can exist in the same space. If my neighbor was feeding like 6, 7 cats, and they're always in my yard and riling up my cat, and yeah, it's like I get it. But again, that's more of a neighbor issue than it is a cat issue. Um, I have one last question before I get to
yeah,
my
sure.
big ones here.
Okay.
Um, I'm so you're the Indiana State Director at the World Humane for Animals. We've got the short legislative session coming up. Next year will be the long one with the budget. What are you guys working on now? We had mentioned working really hard for some things to get these big wins or even little wins, just something. What's on your agenda for the next, say, 3 or 4 years that you're hoping to see that is an achievable goal here in Indiana? What do you look? What are you working towards?
Yeah. So, one thing we've been working on the last few years that has been really, I feel like, gaining some momentum is the dogs and testing issue. So, dogs, beagles specifically, that have been tested on in medical research, and what we can do about that. Because we know in the United States that there's still about 60,000 beagles that are bred specifically to be used as test subjects in medical experiments. And so we've been working at both the state and the federal level on this. I mean, you can imagine that the FDA has a big role to play here federally in the approval with drugs and that kind of thing. But, we do have testing labs here in Indiana. And one thing we've been really working hard on here is to really just solidify a policy in law that would allow for those research labs to adopt out healthy dogs and cats that are being used as test subjects. Last year, so we're calling the bill Sunny's bill. I have a beagle. Her name's Sunny. She was rescued as part of the 4,000 beagles that some of you may have heard about several years ago, that the Humane Society at the time assisted the Department of Justice in cleaning out 4,000 beagles that were bred
Mm-hmm.
in destined for lives in testing labs. And so Sunny, she was a breeder. She was not a test subject, but she was a mama to a lot of puppies that became test subjects. And so the bill is called Sunny's bill. We've been working with Representative Dave Hall on that bill. He's been the lead. And then in the Senate, Senator Becker, they've both been fantastic. And so that bill, it actually passed the House like 87-4, but unfortunately it stalled in the Senate last year. And so really hopeful that this year we'll be able to get that across the finish line. So that's a big priority. That's our biggest priority, I would say. And then we've also been working on a cat declaw bill the last few years. And so this year we are going to do something a little different, because in years past we've been sort of going at it at a different angle related to like how apartments or landlords can require declaw as a condition of tenancy.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we were kind of going at it at that angle, but this year we decided that we're going to work full speed ahead on just outright banning declaw in Indiana. And so that's another priority. We've been working really closely with the Paw Project. So they're also a nonprofit advocacy organization that educates folks about why cat declaw can be problematic. So we will be working on that bill in 2026 and doing some education and advocacy surrounding that as well. I think we always are also additionally looking at opportunities to support our animal shelters and rescues across the state. They are so full. So for anybody that's watching that is inclined to help in any way, adopting, fostering, volunteering, or donating to a local animal shelter or rescue makes a big difference. Our shelters and rescues are so full, and we need all the help we can get. It is not their problem. It is a community problem, and we need to just all work together to do something. And I'm a firm believer that everybody can do a little bit of something, even if it's, a $5 donation. Like, that goes a long way. And I think our community and our rescues and shelters really need to come together and pull for that. So that's my little plug. But we do a lot of support.
That's a great plug. Great plug.
Yeah, it's super important. And again, like, I know we're in a world right now where everything is so divisive and everyone feels stressed out, but like, there's a lot of good that one person can do. And I've been really touched by like the death of Jane Goodall and just the words that she so eloquently always shared with the public. And I do think every day we have a choice of what kind of difference we can make in this world. And we all can do something, as hopeless as some days may feel, or, what the news cycle is saying. I think we all have the ability to make an impact in somebody's day, in their mood, in an animal's life. And so I encourage everybody to do that. I think it's important, and it makes you feel good, and it really does help and make a big impact. And if everybody did it, my goodness, our world would be just an incredible place to live.
A better place.
Yeah.
If I could do some encouragement to make people feel better, turn off the news. I find that if just being involved in politics, I'll find a lot of people will come up to me with stories. Oh, what'd you hear about? I don't know. I don't know. I don't watch Fox or CNN or any. I don't watch any of them. And since giving up the news. Now, if it's the local newspaper about, what, businesses coming in or how the local sports team did, yay, that's fun. But, I give that, give that other stuff up because it is just too overwhelming.
I'm on the same page. I don't watch the news either. I read the news in the morning as it relates to my Google alerts related to my job, and I do, pay attention to my local community and things like that. But again, I think it's good for your mental health to turn off that news.
And so to dovetail into your last plug, is you say, anybody who's listening to this, it is so easy to find these places on Facebook. And I want to say, I think maybe it was Munster Humane. I think someone just recently, last few weeks, they'll put out call outs. Hey, we need these items. And you know what? They're not, they're not saying, hey, we need this $5,000 lawnmower. What they're saying is, hey, if we could get, some towels and some bleach and some food and, something that, if you're so inclined and you have it around the house or you're at the store and you see it, it takes very little to have, good things go a long way. So
Or
that's my plug.
everyone loves Amazon. So, hop on there. Like
Yeah.
most shelters and rescues have our Amazon wish list, and it's like your house is crowded with stuff. Great. Why don't you send the animal shelter something and you can shop on Amazon? So
And I can almost guarantee you, and if they don't, send me a letter. I can almost guarantee you that if you walk into the Munster Humane Society with some of the things that they asked for, they will let you in the back and they will let you pet a puppy or play with a kitten for a little bit. So there you go. There you go. If you're looking for some sunshine, go play with a cat for a little bit and bring
it's
some
a
towels
win-win.
and it is a win-win. So I like to end all of my podcasts with the Bernard Pivot questionnaire. Now I ask people when when I start talking with folks, hey, you want to be on the podcast? I'll share a little form we fill out just to make communication easier, and I try to ask. I think it might not have been on the first version of the form. Maybe the second one was like, have you ever heard of the Bernard Pivot questions? If you have, are you going to look at them up now, or are you not going to? Most people tend not to, though we've all heard them. They're the James Lipton Inside the Actor Studio questions. I had I had to do a little bonus episode of Dad Bod Walking where I explained this for about 20 minutes, why I liked it, because you're watching inside the actor studio with this famous actor that you're fascinated by for some reason. Or for here, people tune in here because they either know me and they're interested in the podcast, or when this comes out in a week or so, they'll know you and they want to support you, so they'll spend an hour and 11 minutes of their day watching it. But everything we've talked about, for the most part, is your job, how we know each other, this stuff. And I always liked Inside the Actor Studio when he would do this, because it stripped away all of the other characters, and now you're just talking to the actor. And to me, that was the highlight of every episode. So I thought, I'm going to do that here. I've been doing it. And so these are 10 questions. You are more than welcome to give the church answer if you like on any of them, or, but I think the real you would be a lot more fun. So the first question is, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word is beautiful. Do I have to elaborate, or just? I mean,
you can if you want. If you've got a good story for beautiful.
No, I just think it's a lovely word.
I just like waking up and having people call me that, and there you go. That's my favorite word.
I think it's lovely. I like to tell people to have a beautiful day.
Yeah. What is your least favorite word?
Like sickle, like I don't know. That's just like a weird word. Sickle, like sickle cell. Like it sounds. I don't know.
My first thought was, isn't that the old gardening tool? A sickle? Yeah, isn't that like the one with the metal hook?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know what it's called.
Oh, now I'm thinking popsicle, but that's just because I'm fat. Okay. The only question that I have to preface and front load on is, the question is, what is your favorite drug? Now, the Bernard Pivot questionnaire was in the 60s and 70s, so it was, a lot of 60s and 70s drug use type questions. But I took it as, sometimes I say, what's your favorite feel-good drug? And some people will say, I've had folks say, oh, I like alcohol, or I like marijuana. I'm certainly not looking to, incriminate anyone. But this is my front load. When I ask, what's my favorite feel-good drug, a lot of times it's convenience. I'm sometimes addicted to that. So, but it can be anything. It could be, hey, I pop a Tylenol every day and I feel good. I don't know, whatever the thing is. So, what's your favorite drug?
My favorite drug is exercise. So I've become really into strength training lately, and I actually became a certified personal
Certified
trainer.
trainer. Yes,
Yes.
that was a note.
Yep.
That's
So
exciting.
look at these buff arms.
Anyways, I as an aside to that, I think everybody has different weight loss journeys. Mine isn't a weight loss journey as much as it is a getting healthy journey. I've got some health issues. I'm on my second pacemaker already, which is extraordinary for being in my early 40s. But there is like a mental switch that's like okay, and I've not figured out what that mental switch is to get on board with being better for myself. And it has nothing. Everybody says, "Oh, you've got a good family. Do it for your kid. Do it for the." Yes, I acknowledge all of these wonderful things you tell me that I should do it for. I just haven't gotten the switch. But I do see that you are, aside from sad dog and cat stories, you are often out there, doing that. And so anybody who has found a way to make that a motivation, I give you all the props because I haven't figured that out.
Thank you. It's a good community that I have. It's a great gym and made a lot of friends, and so I think that makes a big difference. So
That's fantastic.
thank you.
If you were reincarnated, could be anything else, what would it be?
Definitely something that could fly. So probably like
Oh,
a bald eagle or a butterfly or something. I just think I've always been fascinated with flying and animals that can fly, and so yeah, I'd like to see the world from a different perspective.
good answer. What noise or sound do you hate?
Like a piercing dog bark. Like my one dog, she just has this bark that is just like ear piercing, and if she
Oh,
continues to do it, you just want to poke your eyes out. It's
yeah.
very sharp and loud.
What noise or sound do you love?
Ooh, these questions are like really make you think.
That's what you get on Dad Bod Walking.
No, it's good. It's like a good thing. I love the sound of like a rolling stream or like body of water. It's very peaceful and makes me feel like I'm connected to nature.
What is your favorite curse word? And that's no. Before you go and sanitize this, that whatever word that was, that's the one I want to hear.
I feel like, feel like my favorite curse word is twat waffle. I don't even know if that's a real one,
Oh,
but
yes, I
pretty good.
admittedly, so I've got a bunch of them. I've always said there's the bad one that you shouldn't use that I feel some people just earn. But twat waffle and douche canoe is another one.
Ooh, I like that one. I use
Yeah.
ass hat a lot also.
Oh
That is
yeah, I
probably
don't
like
use
one
that
of my
nearly enough.
it's so
And
great. Ass hat is just like that person's being a real ass hat. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
that I may have to slip that into the rotation.
take it for what you need it for.
That's right. That's right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
So I've thought about this a lot. So I think I've said and maybe or I've alluded to this in our discussion today, but I am like really into like writing injustice. Like I'm very into justice. Like I feel like if something is unfair or there's just lack of justice, like it bothers me, and which is why like I feel like animals can't really advocate for themselves or children, right, for that matter. But
Yeah.
one other issue that I'm really passionate about is, I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Innocence Project or the work that Brian Stevenson does with, he wrote the book Just Mercy and it became a movie. So I think I would advocate for like death row inmates or people that have been wrongly accused.
Yeah, the wrongly accused. There's some fantastic books and movies, and even anecdotally, there's some just amazingly powerful stories out there that we live in a world where it's a broken world and people do bad things and they should be held accountable. But the system that does that, especially when we're looking at, I mean, not that there's even a short, I mean, issue, but some of these long term, death row things that, I got to tell you, for me and myself, if I've got a video of you doing something heinous that checks off those like there's like 5 or 6 categories that if you've met those, yeah, you're kind of on that death penalty track, and there's like video of the guy or solid evidence, whatever it is, and it's like it would take a lot for me to waver on that. But if you start stretching some of that stuff, if you start injecting some type of doubt, or these folks are proclaiming their innocence, maybe that's what a guilty person would do. Maybe that's what an innocent person would do. And so, again, we live in a broken, damaged world, and so we need people to advocate to make sure that if there is a punishment in something justifiable, that it is then just. When occasionally you'll see some of these success stories come out of these projects, and somebody will have been released after 20 years, and they say, "Oh well, we gave them $100,000 for every year." It's like, you kidding me? You could not pay me, $1 million a year to go sit in prison? No. So there's, I think that's a noble thing. So
yeah, I will always remember and take to heart in law school we learned about like lineups and just how unreliable like human memory is, and certainly, I mean, different situations or scenarios, right? Like people should be held accountable, but I mean, just based on like just bias and just the way that the human brain works, like there's just a lot of unreliability, even though people really think that they might have seen or were really sure, when in fact they really weren't. And we use a lot of that in convicting people, which is a little disturbing, I think. So,
yeah.
anyway.
2 more questions, and then I'll release you back into the wild to go save the world. What profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
Ooh. To think about this for a second. I do not think that I could be a flight attendant. I think that I have little patience for people, especially that are
Yes.
stuck on airplanes. And I mean, I feel like humanity is at its worst in airports and on airplanes. So I have a lot of kudos and gratitude for people who are flight attendants, because they do God's work in trying to keep people calm in situations and scenarios.
That's a good one. Nobody said that one yet, but I can see me because this upcoming Friday, we're recording this on this is Tuesday. This upcoming Saturday, we're flying out to Vegas for a few days, and I think this has been a heavy travel year. So I think we've made 5 or 6 round trip flights this year, and so I like to think that. Well, I'm not, like an air warrior where these guys are flying out every Monday and coming back Friday. For leisure, we fly quite a bit. So, like I said, 5 or 6 round trips. I like to think I'm a seasoned traveler. It drives me up a wall when I'm sitting there and I watch these people bring these carry-ons that they can't lift, they can't put in. Then they're fussy, and then you've got the one guy who's, hey, turn off your phones. We're back, pulling away from the gate, and he's watching something full blast on his thing, no earphones. For loving a people-oriented job, you're right. Something about trains and planes. Well, trains, planes, and automobiles. That's where humanity's at its worst. Because, so good one. First no to the air attendant.
No, thank you. My sister was a flight attendant for a long time. My brother-in-law is a pilot for United. So I have a lot of deep appreciation for those professions, but I would not be for me. So.
Yeah, that's a lot of customer service. Because it's not like
True.
you can even go in a back room there. You just go like down the hall.
Right. You
Okay.
can't escape unless you jump out
Last.
of the airplane.
Oh, and there's people that do that. Last question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I would hope to be welcomed in, and I think just thanked for all of the good that I did related to speaking up in situations where things were unjust and changing the world for the better. And I think about this a lot, actually, like what legacy I want to live or leave when I'm gone. And I really just want to encourage other people to be their best selves, to do good, and to speak up even when it's not the popular thing to do. And so I do that a lot in animal advocacy, but I truly hope it makes a difference. And I think one of the biggest things with my work is that I don't get to see the impact of
Mm-hmm.
animals. A lot of the policy work that we do really is set to like prevent that cruelty from happening in the first place. And so like I guess I would just hope to be like thanked, or maybe like see a reel of the animals that were in a better
Yeah.
place or had a better life because of the work that I do, because I spoke up and said something when nobody else did.
Well, I believe they will be there to greet you because if there's any group that I am sure will make it into heaven, I know there are, as the question says, if heaven exists, I believe it does. I know there's people that are not going to be there, but I guarantee you, even down to Scamper, the little hamster that I had growing up, he'll be there too. So, yeah.
Yes. And we can all help each other. I think that's the other thing, right? Like, I mean, I think it's really important, not just animals, but other people who are
Yeah.
suffering, and people that are less fortunate than we are. Like, we should help everyone and be kind. And I think everybody has that in their power to do that every day. So,
Well, Samantha Chapman, thank you very much for joining me for the last hour and a half. I think I said an hour, but to be fair, I did say I can't speak in just 20 minutes. It takes me quite a while to land the plane,
totally. Well, I
as
like
we
to
just said.
talk, so, and it's always a pleasure. So I really appreciate the
Well,
invitation. It was super
thanks
fun
for
to
uh, thanks
chat,
for
and
joining me,
yeah, absolutely.
and
Anytime.
I'll be in touch. I'm gonna hit the outro, and we'll catch everybody later. Thanks for listening.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bob.